Christmas Day release in 2020 from Fortet. He had already dropped an album in 2020 with 16 Oceans, which I think was a great addition to his already lengthy and really varied catalogue of albums. I think is really putting him up there with one of the best discographies ever, to be honest, because he's incredibly consistent, and even when he drops something that isn't as good as his best stuff, it's never bad. And to see a Christmas Day release was pretty out of nowhere. I don't think it had been planned or he had announced it. At least I hadn't seen it up until Christmas Eve when he mentioned it, so I was pretty excited to see what he'd deliver. And this actually goes quite nicely in what I just said there. Whenever he drops an album, even when it's not his best, it still ends up being pretty good, and that actually perfectly describes Parallels, because while it is pretty admirable and a pretty strong effort from him, it's not really close to any of his best stuff. What this album manages to do quite nicely is that it manages to feel like it's free-flowing. It's like a free-form album. There's not as much of a structure to some of these songs. He kind of just lets them run on for quite long periods of time, particularly the first track. And I think it adds nicely to his discography because it just gives us something slightly different. You can tell that this isn't something that he would have done 10 years ago, but he's just kind of letting things, you know, naturally flow and seeing where it takes him. Opening track Parallel 1 definitely has the best example of that. I mean, I'm not really going to say I'm a big fan of this track. It doesn't particularly entice me from start to finish. We're talking like a 24-ish minute track. This is a long song. I mean, song, whatever you want to call it, it's certainly fucking something. Jesus Christ, this goes on for quite a long period of time, and it feels it too. The melodies aren't exactly strong enough or enticing enough to grip me the whole way through. I do like the bleepy bloopiness that drops in like the 19-minute mark-ish. That's a little fun moment. Kind of reminds me of something like you'd get from maybe you know, like some 90s IDM or something. There's definitely something admirable about this track, but it just doesn't do enough to keep me entertained for the length of the song. It really doesn't need to be this long, and it just doesn't take me on an adventure. I want tracks like this to really go in an exciting direction, and I just don't think it does. But I welcome this style, this idea of him doing something like this, even if it isn't that great in my opinion. I sort of see potential for him to do something like this in the future and maybe give us something a bit more gripping. Sort of feels like a stepping stone to something else he could do later on. The rhythms and grooves do quickly come in though with Parallel 2. Perhaps I'm just more entertained by him doing stuff like this than anything else, because the beat on this is really bustling and really in your face. I really like what he's going for here. The sort of squishy little sound effects that jump in and out of the track are really fun too. He's kind of given us some really groovy house banger type stuff here that I think he's pretty much in his element with, because there were some tracks like this on his last album too that really hit nicely, and I think this track is another example of that. Parallel 3 though, this sounds like something that was on the last Anna Meredith album. Like the way that this little melody plays through is really nice, and it's got this cute kind of feel to it. It's only like a minute long though. It's crazy how this melody is so good and one of my favorite moments on the album, and yet it takes up a tiny portion of the whole thing. We're talking like a 70-minute album from Fortet here, and this is one of the best moments, and yet it ends before you've even like realized. It's weird, especially when the first track is so long. I don't know why he couldn't have chopped off some of the minutes from that onto this and extended what he's going for here, because it sounds so good. That Anna Meredith album was really great, by the way. I don't think many people really checked it out, but not enough people checked it out, but it really does sound like something that would have fit on there. Vibrant house tunes keep coming with Parallel 4. This is a great little track. I really love the rhythm on this one. It really keeps you on your toes, and I just think Fortet really sounds in his element. Whenever he's trying to play with ideas and sounds, he manages to nail everything he goes for. There are some more slower paced tracks though towards the end, particularly like Parallel 7 for example. Not as in his element here, but I think when he kind of amps things up or ramps things up even, it's definitely the best he has to offer on this whole thing, because I feel like there's just a lack of urgency on Parallel 7. I feel like if you sped up the tempo, it would have definitely been one of the best moments. I really like Parallel 9. It reminds me of something that you'd get on 16 Oceans. It has that kind of like springtime feel to it, which is weird because his last album was released at that time of year, and of course, once again, you know, this time around this album's actually released in the winter, but it also has a very similar vibe to what he was doing last spring on 16 Oceans. It's kind of odd, but it fits, and it probably would have fit on the album really nicely. Parallel 10 has just really beautiful piano melody to close it out. You know, the last few minutes are really, really gorgeous, honestly. Reminds me of something like Masakatsu Takaki would do, who is a fantastic pianist, a really, really amazing musician. And yeah, it's just a really nice way to close it off. Even if it isn't exactly fitting in with some of the ideas that he threw out on the album, it still makes for a good track. So yeah, overall, I mean, like I said this at the start of the video, it's not anywhere near his best, but it's probably not his worst either. I mean, I don't even know what his worst would be in his discography, but it kind of lands a solid release, but it's not as you know, enticing all the way through as what I'd like it to be, particularly from Fourth Tet. But there's still some great moments on here, like Parallel 4 is definitely the best track for me. And I think as well, you could tell with the fact that it was a bit more structureless, freeform. You know, some of these tracks try to go in directions that he hasn't usually taken us before, particularly the first track. I think he's kind of playing with things here, and given the fact that he did already release an album in 2020, this one just feels a bit more like the experimental one, I guess you could say, something he's playing with sounds, and I respect it, and to be fair, it does end up being pretty good. So yeah, 6 out of 10 from me. I do like this overall. Not amazed by it, but it's pretty good, and I think, yeah, I welcome some of the ideas he's going for here. Definitely want to see where he takes us next, if he does release anything throughout the course of 2021. Who knows? But let me know what you think, if you actually really like it a lot more than me, or you think it's better than his 16 Oceans album, you think it's worse, that'd be great. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed what I had to say here, and do have a good day, and goodbye.